Hey everyone! In today's video, we're going to be building a custom Instagram links page just like this one. The reason for these pages is because Instagram by default only lets you have one link in your profile. This is just not enough in this day of social media and multiple platforms. So one way that a lot of people get around this limitation is by using a page in their bio that has multiple links in it. That way, when followers click your bio link, you can show them as many links as your little heart desires. Now, as a disclaimer, I didn't invent this links page myself. There's actually a web app called Linktree, and if you sign up with them, you can create a page like this that has multiple links in it, specifically designed for Instagram. The only downside is that the free version doesn't let you do much customization. You would need to upgrade to the paid version if you want to change the background and the colors. So I figured, why not build this type of page myself, and then I can just style it the way I want using CSS. Now, I'm not bashing Linktree at all. I think they're a great web app and they do a good service for people who may not know coding and they just want a really fast Instagram links page up and running right away. But as a coder, I like everything to be customized, so I just prefer building things myself. And I figured some of you might want to do the same thing, so I created a GitHub repository that includes all the files needed to make a page just like this, and you're welcome to use that as a template and make your own page. Now, as far as hosting this page, we're going to be using GitHub Pages because you can host a static website with them for free. It's pretty awesome. All you need is a GitHub account, and honestly, if you don't have one already, you should definitely sign up. The way you set this all up is by logging into your GitHub account and creating a new repository called yourusername.github.io. For example, you can see here mine's called thecodercoder.github.io. You just need to make sure that the first part of your repository name exactly matches your actual GitHub username. Otherwise, none of this is going to work. So in this repository, if you create an index.html file and then commit and push it to your master branch, GitHub will then automatically load that file in the URL yourusername.github.io. You can see my repository here, and I already have a few other projects, so I just created a links folder so that it can contain all the files for my links page. Then, in order to load that page, I would just need to load the URL, thecodercoder.github.io/links. Keep in mind that when you deploy to GitHub Pages, it usually takes a couple minutes for the changes to go through, especially if you're setting it up for the first time. It may take several minutes. So if things aren't working, don't worry, just keep refreshing and be patient. So let me walk you through my workflow here. I have open here my DIY links page GitHub repository, and all the files here are what's going to be part of this project. Primarily, I'm only going to be working with the index.html file, as well as in this app folder, I have my Sass file. I also have an image folder with images, or rather just one image. And then I have gulp to compile my Sass file to a CSS file, which will be put into this dist folder. So when I've finished all the coding for this DIY links page project, I'm only going to have to copy the final compiled files, so my HTML file, my CSS file, and any image files, and I'm going to put them into my GitHub Pages repository, which I have over here. And if you remember, I had created this links folder to contain all the links page files. Once I have everything copied over into the links folder, then I will commit my changes, push to the master branch, and then GitHub will automatically update my GitHub page. So that's my workflow in a nutshell. Let's get into the code. I'm using VS Code as my code editor, and in VS Code I have my DIY links page repository open. In here we're really just going to be working with this index.html file as well as my style Sass file. And you can see both these files are pretty empty, so we'll be filling them out as this tutorial goes along. One other thing to note is that in the index.html file, I have added a reference to Google Fonts, so I'm loading Roboto as a custom font. And then I have my reference to load the compiled style.css file. Now, when I'm making a website, I usually try to do the markup first and then move on to the styles. So let's go in here and kind of plan out the structure for what we want this page to look like. At the top of the page, I think I'm going to have my logo. So I'm just going to add a little comment here for logo just to kind of set this section off. Then under my logo is going to be all the links that I'm going to have. I do want to kind of have a space at the top for one featured link, and I'm going to style this link separate from the others so it'll stand out better. Then under the featured link, I will have all my regular links, mostly to blog posts and things like that, where I can refer people to if they have common questions. So we'll call this popular content. Then at the bottom, I am going to have some smaller links to different places on the internet where people can find me. So, my blog website, as well as social media channels like YouTube and Twitch. And of course, I don't need to include Instagram in this because the people who land on this page have only come from Instagram. So we'll just add a little title here for the channels section. Okay, so that's pretty much the structure of our web page. Let's just start adding the actual markup here. So the logo is just going to be an image. I have already added the image file to this project. So it's in image folder and it's called logo.png. Then we'll add our little self-closing tag and save. So under the featured section, I think what I want to do for the featured and the popular content as well as the channels is add a little subtitle so that people know what section it is and they know what type of link is going to be here. So I'll just say featured. And then for popular content, we'll just call it the same thing, popular content. And then at the bottom, channels, same thing, we'll just call it channels. Or maybe I'll say something more like follow me. It's more like a call to action kind of thing. I'll say follow me on. There we go. Okay, so then in each section, I'm going to add one, for the featured section, I'm just going to add one link to, some link that I'm going to feature. And for now, we're just going to say featured link 1. Yes, very imaginative, I know. Then we'll add a bunch of links down here for the regular content. We'll just say link 1. Maybe we'll say 3 links, link 2 and link 3. And then we'll kind of do the same thing here. We'll say, let's say my blog is 1, and then YouTube, and then Twitch. Okay, so that's pretty much it. Let's see how that looks in the browser. Keep in mind that we haven't done any styling yet. So here's the page that we have, and let me reload it. Okay, so you can see that, let me zoom in a bit. Everything's here. We have our image, we have all our markup, and of course nothing is styled. So let's start styling things. I think the first thing I'm going to do is I would like to have a nice background here that's not just white like this, but if you look on my actual website at codercoder.com, I really like this blue-green gradient up at the top. So I think I'm actually just going to copy all the CSS that I already wrote from my website and add that to the CSS for this links page. Because this page is so simple, I think I can just add the background color stuff to the body tag itself. So let's do that. Body, and then I'm just going to copy all the styles from my website. Indent that stuff. And just briefly, these 2 lines here for background image, those are what is creating the linear gradient. So you can see here on the bottom, background image, linear gradient. This dark blue color is the first one, and then we have a teal color. So that kind of is what controls that gradient. Then for some browsers, we have to include the WebKit style as well, and that has a slightly different syntax, but it achieves the same thing. And then lastly, this is really for the fallback, if you can't have any kind of gradients, there's just going to be a solid background color of this dark blue. And the reason that this is really important is in case you have a browser that can't load the gradients, if I didn't have this background color set, it would just default to white, which would be bad because the text color is also white, so it would be completely unreadable. Not to mention it would look silly because it would look completely blank. So we want this text color to be white. And let's reload all that and see how that looks. All right, so isn't it looking better already? You can see here that the gradient's repeating because the body tag only kind of goes down until the actual content stops. So I know that as I keep styling things, the page will get taller and it'll probably take care of itself. But just in case, let's add something so that the body will always be 100% of the height that you can see. So one way you can do that is set a min height of 100 VH. VH stands for viewport height, meaning the complete height that you can see in your device. So it'll vary depending on what phone you're using, or if you're using a mobile phone versus a desktop computer. But there we go. Now the gradient is pretty much seamless. So let's copy that style back into our style SAS file. Let's reload to check, and okay, things look pretty good. The second thing I want to do is let's just make this gigantic image a bit smaller, because right now it says the image file is 508 pixels wide. Obviously it doesn't need to be that wide. I think maybe 120 or so would be okay. So width is 120. Now this is the only image in the entire page, but just in case, if I want to add another image down the line, I'm going to add a CSS class. So I'll add a class of logo here. That means in our style file, we can just add a style for the logo class. And then it's 120 pixels. Okay, looks pretty good. I think the next thing I want to do is I really just want everything to be centered, because this is going to be displayed on really a mobile device, so it's more like this width, and usually for mobile design things tend to be kind of centered. So I think if I just add a text align to the body, a text align of center, yeah, so everything is centered now, which is great. So again, we'll add this to the body. Cool. Okay, let's make these links wide as well, because they're just inheriting the sort of default styles that the browser will give links. Okay, looks good. Okay, we got to change this font, because this is the default, Georgia or Times or whatever font that is. So again, we're going to add these styles to the body tag. So we had that Roboto font that we added from Google Fonts, and then as a fallback, we'll just do regular sans serif. And the reason that we want to add these styles to the body tag itself is because everything else is in the body. It's a child element of the body tag. You can see here, body tag, and then everything else is in it. So if we add styles to the body, then that means that any child element will, by default, inherit the styles from the body tag. That way, you only need to add it in one place. Okay, looks pretty good. Let's start doing the fun part and styling these buttons here. So the first thing I want to do is let's add a little border to all those links. Let's say border of 2 pixels. And I'm going to have it be like a white line border. Oh, it's too many Fs. Is that too many Fs? No, that's right. See how that looks? Okay, looks a little thick, but I think that might be okay when they get bigger. Let's also, okay, I don't really want these links to be on the same line. So if I do something like display block, it will automatically make everything be 100% of the width. So let's do display block. Let's just add it here. Display block. And it looked like it needed a little bit of padding inside. So let's add some padding of, I don't know, let's do 10 pixels and maybe 20 pixels. So it's 10 pixels on the vertical padding, top and bottom, 20 pixels on the right and left. But because the links will go full width, the horizontal padding doesn't matter quite as much. Okay, let's also add a little spacing between the buttons. So we'll say margin, I really just want a margin bottom, so like under every button. Let's try 15 pixels. Okay, it's going pretty good. We'll probably be tweaking these things later, but right now we're just kind of trying to get the general look and feel of what we want the page to look like. I think thirdly, we'll just leave the buttons as is for now, but I think these subtitles are a little bit too big. Yeah, it looks like, what's the font size? 24 pixels. That's a little big. Since I'm not sure exactly how big I want the font size to be, let's test it in the browser. Let's try maybe 20 pixels. Still a little big. Maybe 16 looks okay. The other thing I'm going to do is I want to make these uppercase. Okay. And we will make them not bold, so normal font weight. Okay. Actually, I think they could go a tad bit smaller even. Let's try 14. And we'll add a little letter spacing as well to just make it look different from the regular text. Okay, that looks pretty good. Let's copy this and we'll add another style for H2s. Okay, that looks pretty good. We're actually maybe not halfway there, but we're getting there. Okay, I think I definitely need to cap. I need to set a max width to kind of cap the width that these buttons can be. Yeah, 500 pixels is a bit too long. Let's do max width. And let's say, I don't know, maybe 400 pixels. Okay, cool. Now, because these are display block, we need to, in order to center them, we actually need to add a margin value, or margin property rather. 0, auto, and then I had a margin bottom already of 15 pixels. Auto. So that will cancel this out, and we'll delete it anyway. But now the buttons are centered. So instead of margin bottom, we'll say margin. There we go. Okay, so that looks pretty good. And one thing I do when I'm building responsive stuff is I will constantly be checking to see what the design looks like at different widths, because if something's breaking, I want to fix it as soon as possible. Okay, this looks pretty nice. Let's get rid of that underline as well. Text decoration of none. Perfect. Okay. I think I'm actually going to, let's see what this will look like on the emulator. So in Firefox and Chrome and like I'm pretty sure every browser, they have this tool that will sort of show you what the website will look like on various phones and iPads and different devices like that. So let me zoom out. I zoomed in quite a bit. Okay, so this is what the website right now will look like on an iPhone 6, 7, and 8. Looks okay. I think if possible, I would like to contain all the content on one, like in one view without having to scroll. Oh, and actually these follow me links, what I want to do is make them smaller and kind of put them, all three of these on the same line. So let's work on that right now. So it's the channel section. And I'm going to use Flexbox to put these on the same line. So let's add a div. This will be the parent div. So I'll just say channels. And then I'm going to move all these links into that div. So for this channels element, we'll add another style down here. Channels. And we'll say display flex, and we want it to be Flexbox on every single device, so we don't need to worry about media queries. Then the next thing is in the channels div, each of these links is a child element of the channels, so I also want to make sure that each of them is the same width as the others, so that they're all equal width. So we can do that by adding a property of flex of 1. So that means that every child element of A in the channels div will have the same ratio of width to one another. So let's see how that looks. Let's reload the page. And okay, so you can see the links now are the same line and looks like they're actually different heights. One really cool thing that Firefox has is it actually has a little tool that will inspect Flexbox and CSS grid items. I think we really want to add a little bit of space between all these buttons. Also, they're rather big. What font size are all these at? Okay, these are at 16. I think that actually may be just a bit too big for all these links. So let's go back and change the font size for all anchor links. We can do that here. Actually, I have a little kind of an order of how I'd like to order my CSS styles. I like to start with things like display block or flex attributes, and then kind of go from bigger to smaller. So like width, and then margin, then padding, color, font styles, and then other special styles that you don't use very often, like text decoration. But anyway, let's add the font size. And generally 1 rem is 16 pixels, so we want that to be smaller than that, maybe like 14 or 13. So let's try 0.8 rem. Let's see how that looks. Okay, so now the links are, what is it? Oh, 8 rem, which is 12.8 pixels. I think it's okay. It might be a tad bit small, so let's just try 0.9 rem. Okay, we'll see how that is. I feel like that's a bit on the large side, but yeah, I'm going to try 8.5. 8.5, final answer. And then font size is 13. Okay, that's actually pretty good. So for these buttons, man, I may actually make them smaller. First of all, let's get rid of this padding. So let's just test out what a different padding would look like. So right now the padding is 10 pixels on top and bottom, 20 pixels on left and right. So let's try half of that. 5 pixels on top and bottom and 10 pixels on left and right. So that's pretty good. And now you can see that they're actually the same width. And to add spacing between, let's see if this will work. If I had a margin right of maybe 5 pixels. Okay, that looks pretty good. Let's try a bit more. 10. Okay, that's pretty cool. And then we want to get rid of the right padding, or the right margin rather, for this last button, but let's add that after we copy these styles over so they don't get overwritten or something. So what we want to do is for the last button on the channel's links would be the pseudo element of, last child. Or pseudo selector, not pseudo element. We'll have a margin right of 0. Okay, let's check how that works. Looks pretty good. I think we don't really need this anymore. How do we turn this off? There we go. Okay, that looks, hey, that's getting there, right? Okay, let's think about these button styles right now. I think for the regular links like here, this is good. I think I may actually add a little bit more vertical padding. So it's 10 pixels on top and bottom. Let's try 12. Okay, that's actually a bit better. And then, okay, so for button styles, the sort of transparent with a white border, that's a good style for the regular popular content links. We're going to style the featured link with something else. And then I think I'm also going to style these follow me's as a bit different as well. So let's start with the featured link. And because most of these are white border and transparent, let's see how this would look if it was kind of reversed. So like if it had a background color of white, and then I'm going to take that dark blue color that's in the gradient, and then we'll say color of that color. That looks okay. I kind of want to add a little border inside. Let's just copy these over first. So again, to differentiate this link, we'll add a class. We'll just call this one featured. Oops, if I can spell. Featured. So in our style, anchor link of featured. And we'll copy those styles that we just created. Oops, why didn't that work? What's going on here? Oh, I forgot. Oops. needs an ampersand because it's in this same element as the A. There we go. Yeah, that's okay. I kind of feel like, what if it needs to be a bit bold or something? I guess that could work. We'll try that for now. Not sure how I feel about it, but the other thing I wanted to do was add a pseudo element. So for the before pseudo element, I'm going to add what I'm trying to do is add kind of an inside border. So sort of like these white borders, but it'll be the dark blue and then inside the actual button. So we'll probably have to do a position absolute. And when you have a position absolute, you need the parent element to be position relative. Otherwise, it'll just like fly off the page up until it can find some parent element that's position relative, which is probably the body at this point. And then we want this to be, let's see, top 2 pixels, left 2 pixels, and then width 100. And I'm not sure if I need to do the height. Let's see how this looks. Oh, doesn't look like anything. Oh, I forgot to add the border. Border, let's try 2 pixels solid, and then that dark blue color again. Okay, well, it's happening, but it looks like I do need to do height 100%. Okay, so the width and the height are good, but because I added that offset of 2 pixels, the width and the height are a bit too much. So there's one cool thing in CSS you can do is you can do calc, and then you can actually do things like you can mix units. So I want to do 100% minus, I think 4 pixels. Is that right? Yeah, that's right. And then same thing with width. So it would be calc 100 minus 4. So that seems a bit strong. I think actually I need to add more vertical padding to all the links, but let's copy this stuff over before we forget. Oops. Oh yeah. Move this down here. Okay, let's add more padding. Let's try even 15. Okay, so that's better. So now this button doesn't look as, just was looking a little bit cramped. So now the padding has gone up to 15. Okay, I'm just gonna try one more thing. I'm gonna try decreasing the width of this border. No, way too little. Yeah, it needs to be 2 pixels. Yeah, I just don't know about that font weight of bold. I feel like it has to be there. Okay, well, what are you gonna do? I think this is good enough as it is. So as we mentioned earlier, we're going to keep these link styles the same because they're just kind of the default link styles. And then I want to style these a bit different. So I want them to look different from the regular links, but maybe not stick out quite as much as this featured button. So I'm going to try to do a solid color of that blue color, the dark blue, and take away the white border. And then hopefully it'll look different, but not stick out so much more than the other links. So again, this is going to be the channels links. Let's go down to channels. Then we'll add a background color of, again, that dark blue color. I really need to create a variable for this, but I guess I'm lazy. Okay, so it does stick out. Yeah, I think that's okay. Let's take away that border. There we go. So now it's just a little bit more subtle than like having just a bright white button here. I think the other thing I'm going to do is add some hover states. So even though there's no real hover state on mobile, often when you click a link, it'll kind of end up changing to have that hover state style. So Let's just add those in anyway. So for the featured button, what do we want to do? Maybe when you hover, it'll, let's do this. A featured hover. Oh, perfect. Firefox is pretty cool. Let's just change the background color again to that blue. Oops. Yeah, I was just hoping that I had it. Background color to the blue, and then color of white. Looks pretty good. So let's remove the hover, see how that looks. Pretty good. Let's add a transition as well. We'll just do transition of all. So all properties will have some kind of transition, and then 200 milliseconds, and then we'll just do ease in out. Let's try that hover again. That's pretty good. Okay, let's copy these styles over. And then featured hover, we'll have this stuff. And then did I forget anything? I think that was it. Okay, cool. Good enough for me. Then for these, I think what I'm going to do, I sort of actually like this dark blue hover. So I'm going to add that same dark blue hover for the regular links as well. So actually, I can make this effect. Oh, I did already. No, I didn't. I'll make this effect all the anchor links. Oh, what's going on? I wonder if there's something wrong with my browser. Oh, there we go. Okay, so it's working on the regular ones, but for the featured link, it's not. Oh, that's interesting. So the background color on the featured is actually taking priority over just the regular anchor hover. This is bad practice. You try to not use important, but I'm just doing this for test purposes. That's interesting. Okay. So I would actually need to also do the hover for the featured links. I'll just add it back in here. There's probably a slightly better way of doing this. I mean, actually what I could do is just put these hover styles in one place. Whoops. So I'm going to do A and then A featured, and then have one hover state style here. And that should work. Okay, cool. Yeah, there we go. And then of course the hover state is affecting these, but it's not doing anything. So I think I want to do something different for these, but not super, you know, in your face. I may honestly just do like text decoration underline. Yeah, that's fine with me. So that's under the channels. So add the hover and text decoration underline. There we go. Cool. Oops. So that looks pretty good. I'm pretty happy with how that looks. Let's just test on different emulated devices to see. Yeah. iPad. Okay, this needs to be fixed. This is too wide. So if you remember, I'd added a max width of 400 to the links. So I want to do the same thing to this channels div. Let's just make sure that works. Max width, and then of course margin auto. So channels. So that looks good. Oh, what's going on here? Oops. Okay. There we go. That's what we want to see. So you can see that even when the width gets smaller, things still look all right. So yeah, I hope you found this tutorial helpful. If you end up using this template, I have the link in the GitHub. I have the link to the GitHub repository below. Yeah, if you end up using it, feel free to drop me a note on Instagram or leave a comment here on YouTube. I'd love to see what you've done. So thanks for watching, and yeah, we'll see you next time.